Hello everyone. So this is just going to be a short 5 or 6 minute video, and the entire purpose of this video is to show you that charging cables are not all the same. So there's often speak in the field that from individuals as well as companies that, oh, you shouldn't spend $20 on charging cable, you can just spend $5 and get a cheap one off of eBay or Amazon or Temu or Temu, however it's pronounced. And the truth is, there is a difference in these cables, and there is a difference in the material used in these cables. And the reason why you should care is because oftentimes what happens is these cables fail and they end up damaging the device that they're plugged into, whether that be a tablet or a cell phone. And these devices are not cheap, so if you damage them, they usually cost a few $100s to repair. So the best case scenario is buy quality cables and skip the junk ones that are being passed off by Chinese sellers as the same quality. And what I'm going to do is show you in this video that these are not the same quality. And yes, you kind of need a microscope to do this, as the naked eye can't really tell the difference unless you have really good eyes. Apparently I don't. But it's extremely clear under a microscope. Okay, so what we're going to look at is 3 lightning port charging cables. And yeah, I realize that this only pertains to iPhones and iPads and iPods. Not all of them, but the majority of them. That being said, this is no different for USB-C charging cables. So this first cable is a Chinese $5 cable, and look how easily this metal scratches. I'm not pushing down with my tool. This second cable here is an Anker brand cable. And no, they're not a sponsor of my channel. I'm too small for that, but they should be because they make good cables. No scratching. Interesting. And the third cable here is an official Apple cable. Again, I can push really hard on this and it does not scratch. That tells me that the density of the steel being used in these cables is drastically different. Now you might be thinking, hey T-Zerf, why does it matter if they're different? Who cares? Well, this is why. On the left hand side here is that cheap $5 cable from China that you can buy on Amazon, you can buy on eBay, you can buy off of Temu or Temu. The point is these cables, after a couple dozen times of being used, plugged in and unplugged from the device, they look like this. And they look like this because the metal is extremely fragile and malleable. So every time you insert it, you run into a perfect scenario where you can have the top portion of this plug break off in the port, which could cause permanent damage. And the way that that happens is the top portion of the lightning port plug will break off into the socket. Now, if you look at the picture, the lightning port in question here is on the left-hand side. That's the junk cable. There is a crack on either side of the lightning port, and it cracks right where there are notches in the port that the inside of an iPad or AirPods or iPhone, a small little clip/spring locks into place on either side of a lightning cable when you plug it into the port in order to stop the cable from falling out of the port. It has just enough friction to hold it in place. The problem is this clip puts pressure on the cable head, which means if it's made out of malleable metal, it deforms it and eventually it will break. And I'll show you that in this video. I'll show you that these cracks are not just superficial. The cracks are fully through the metal, and the top of this cable can literally be removed with little effort or force. Okay, so here we have the cable, and watch. I'm just gonna take my little tool, and all it is a metal spudger. That's what this tool is. And you're gonna see where these cracks are on either side of this lightning port cable. All I have to do is very gently pry up, and the entire piece of metal just disconnects from the cable. And this is what happens when you plug this into any Apple device that uses this charging cable. And then what happens is this piece of metal gets stuck in the device, and if you're lucky, you'll be able to pull it out. If you're unlucky, it's going to cause permanent damage to the charging port, which means you're going to have a few $100 bill to repair it. And as we all know, Apple doesn't do these types of repairs for you, so you're going to have to find an independent shop that's capable of doing them. The best bet is don't buy this cheap cable. Seriously, stop buying the cheap cable. Just go buy a quality one. Go grab one from Anker.
Again, not a channel sponsor, but I've used their cables, I've tested their cables, and their cables are good. If you prefer the official Apple ones, great, even better. But stop buying the $5 knockoff junk cables, because when this device separates, you're going to have this piece of metal stuck in your iPad, your iPod, your iPhone, your AirPods, and you're going to be wondering, well, geez, what am I supposed to do? And it's like, well, if you're really good and you have the right tools, you can probably get it out. You can dislodge it. And if you're lucky, it won't do any damage. If you don't notice and you try to plug in another cable, you could damage the charging port. Or if you're really unlucky, maybe you get two contacts that make contact and you have sparks and it causes an electrical fire. The latter probably less likely to happen, but it is certainly a possibility. The moral of the story is this: saving $10, $11, $12 on a cable. Let's just say you save $15 on a cable and you end up with a cheap one that costs you $5 or $6. The point is, if that cable has any possibility, has a 20 or 30 or 40% chance of damaging your device because it separates like the cable did in this video, and this isn't just one cable, by the way, this is hundreds or thousands of cables over the years that I've come across fixing iPhones, iPads, and AirPods, specifically the charge port. And the majority of these repairs could have been completely avoided if the individuals didn't use $5 cables off of eBay, Amazon, or more recently, Temu. So the point of the story is, don't save $15 and cost yourself several $100s in repairs when you damage the charge port on an Apple device. It's not worth it. Just go buy a better quality cable and spend the extra money. Also, here in this video, you can see that very effortlessly I'm able to break away this metal by just scraping with the metal spudger. This shows how malleable and how fragile this metal actually is. Also, for those wondering, the other end of this cable, which happens to be a USB-A port, guess what? They use the exact same metal. I mean, why wouldn't they? It's just as cheap, just as fragile, just as malleable. As you can see, it scratches all the same. The only difference, I would say, is that this end, because it's not being constantly plugged in and unplugged from a device, has a much lower chance of failing. And if it did fail, it would at least be with a charger, which you can typically pick up for $20 or $25. I hope you found this video useful, and hopefully this saves a bunch of people from having to have expensive repairs done. If you're looking for other repair information, you can find it on my website at tzerf.com. The link will be in the description, and I'll catch you guys in another video.